Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is games leaving the collection for the month of May. This is a regular monthly series I've been doing on the channel since the very beginning of the channel. This is like one of the first series I ever started, and it is the most consistent one, because ever since I first got into gaming, I was always interested in trying as many games as possible, but that means as much as games come in, games have to go. And speaking of which, the usual disclaimer is that I cover a lot of games. I play a lot of games every single year, and you should not take the games leaving the collection as a, attack on those games. Some of them, frankly, are not good games. Others, most of them, are usually games that are good, but they're not the ones that made it into my collection, and then sometimes they are the very best of games, or not the very best of games, but close to the very best of games, but practically speaking, I can only keep and play so many games, and sometimes there are some really solid games that have to leave. In today's video, I think we have a whole bunch of games. We have one particular game that might bother you, and then we have one particular game that bothers me that it's leaving. But it is what it is. Hard choices have to be made, and I can only keep and play so many games, no matter how much I like them. Secondly, if you are a member of the channel, either over on Patreon or over on KoFi, if you're on either of those platforms, I give away games every single month. Every single month, I give away some games from these videos over here. So if you are a member, you can go ahead and check, and higher tiered members are almost guaranteed a game, versus, any member is eligible for a random draw of me picking someone to give a game to, and I ship away, I don't know, 3 to 4 games every single month out to various members of Patreon and KoFi. So if you are supporting me there, thank you very much already, and if you want to start supporting for all the content, all that stuff, it is very much appreciated. I'll have links down below. And with that, let's go ahead and start this video off. Of course, timestamps to everything down below. Let's start off with a kids one. I actually think I have a few family-friendly ones, but one specifically that is an older kids game I've had for a long time, and it's finally leaving the collection because I don't think it's been played in like 3 years. This is Crazy Race, which is a game you've probably never heard of, and that makes sense because, even this copy of the game isn't even in English. I don't know if they ever made English copies of the game, but this is a game from Ravensburger, and it's basically a race. What you're going to be doing in this game is you have this little board over here, and these tiles clip in so there's some degree of variety, but then you're rolling dice to try to proceed on the board. You're picking and choosing handfuls of dice to see how far you can get based on the dice you're going to be rolling, and every character has their own unique abilities as well. You're trying to see how far you can push yourself, but there is a busting degree where you're going to bust if you roll too much, and you're trying to be mindful of not busting while trying to get as far as you can based on the specific creature you've chosen. It's a fun game where you're constantly rotating animals to choose different lengths of your race, so similar to Small World if you ever played that, where you're constantly changing up your race that you're playing in the game. In this one, you're not changing, it says race 2, but it's a different kind of race. But in this game, you're going to be choosing different animals every single round to choose how they progress you in the race as you cross certain checkpoints. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. I have an English printed copy of the rules in here. But it's a game that, as much as I've enjoyed playing with my family, it's one that we probably haven't played in 2+ years, if not 3+ years. It's been a long time. In fact, if I went into my apps over there on my phone, if I went into my BG stats, I wonder, you know what, I'm going to do it, okay? Because I've been logging plays since, I've been logging plays since 2018 or so, 2019, and I wonder if I have any plays. Let me see, because I can do this over here. Now keep in mind, I should note, I log most games, I do not log all games. I definitely forget things, so Crazy Race, the last logged play was April 16th, 2020. So I have logged a play in here, but the last logged play was April 16th, 2020. So we're looking at 4 years. It's been 4 years since I played this. So as much as my kids love this, and I guarantee you, by the way, there's a decent chance that if they see this on the game's leaving pile, there's a decent chance it gets put right back on the shelf, because they are almost as bad as hoarding as I am, at least when it comes to the things they like. Anyway, that's Crazy Race. From there, we're going to go with another. This one's a kind of kid adjacent. We have a few family adjacent ones over here. This is Magic Rabbit. I've enjoyed this one. This is a fun little game from Alley Cat Games. I reviewed this maybe 7-8 months ago, not too far back, but basically in the game, you're trying to cooperatively line up and match the rabbits to the hats. It's a very fun, charming puzzle that plays in literally 3 minutes, and it has a degree of unlocking challenges you get in the game to make the game more interesting. It's a lot of fun. I kind of want to put it back. I kind of want to put it back on the shelf. No, it's going to go. Because here's the reason. The reason Magic Rabbit's going is because as a 3-minute game, I've played through it enough times with enough of the different challenges and puzzles that I feel I've seen what the game has to do, and I don't know, it is kind of fun. And it's a small box game. And it plays in 3 minutes. It's real time though. No, it's gonna go. It's gonna go. Because the real-time nature of the game, I think, is the clincher for me. Real-time games, I find I like the puzzle they present, and I like finding out and exploring what they do, but I find I'm less likely to pull them off the shelf, with the notable exception of Project Elite, although to be fair, I don't pull it off the shelf as much as I'd like. But Magic Rabbit is a good game. I've seen it has to offer. I really think, especially if you like real-time games or short games or any of those stuff, again, the game plays in 3 minutes. It's the timer of the game. You're trying to work to line up the various hats and rabbits. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. There's a small chance after this video goes back on the shelf. I'd say, by the way, these videos, they go up on the channel every single month, and every single month I get rid of anywhere between, I don't know, 10 to 20 games a month. And I'd say that probably every third video, one game gets put back on the shelf that you never really see, and I forget to update you in the next video, but let me go, oh, that game, I got rid of it, it's still on the shelf. Like Brave Rats, I don't know, 2 years ago I got rid of Brave Rats, went back on the shelf. That kind of thing does happen. Sometimes it's because I have second thoughts, other times it's because, like, usually my daughter is the one who has second thoughts, but sometimes other kids as well. So that kind of thing does happen, just a fair warning, but it is the exception. From there we have Too Many Cooks over here. Too Many Cooks is a fun game from Good Games Publishing, very similar to Decorum. If you played Decorum from Floodgate Games, it has that kind of silent communication aspect where you're trying to make sure that your requirements are met, but every player has different requirements, but you can fulfill all the requirements. But it's an interesting little game where you kind of have this board over here. You're trying to say, oh, well, you know, you can't have any mushrooms in that column, so you're trying to be mindful of that. There can't be more than 2 blue cards on the board. So the players can slowly swap cards in and out with a degree of trying to make sure their goals are met while trying to be mindful of the fact that other players have their own goals, and no one is able to say their goals out loud. So you're trying to read into what players are doing as you figure out the whole back and forth. Again, I find the game does work very well. I've enjoyed Decorum. I've enjoyed Too Many Cooks. For me, similar to Magic Rabbit over here, this kind of puzzle is a puzzle that I enjoy experiencing, but not necessarily my favorite game to keep and play long term. I'm like, ooh, I've played it a bunch, I've seen what it does, and I'm ready to move on from it. Have had in my collection maybe a year and a half, so it's been here for a decent amount of time. Actually, did my review ever go up? I've had a review of this game sitting around for a bit. It may have gone up on the channel, it may not have. I'll try to make sure that review goes up at some point, but I reviewed this a while ago, I just don't know if the review went up. But anyways, it's been in my collection for about a year and a half or so. I want to say last year Gamma. So yeah, about a year and a half is how long I've had this one, and it's good. I'm just ready to move on from it. From there we have Change My Mind, which has already happened a few times, or almost happened a few times in this video. Change My Mind is a light little party game. This is part of a series of roundup reviews I did. I do this little 6 small box game review series on the channel. This is part of that. In fact, there were like 6 games in that video. They're all here, so that kind of thing does happen. But anyways, Change My Mind over here. Change My Mind is a fun little party game where you're basically trying to, come up with an order of things. The card gives you an order, and you sit there and say, okay, great, I have to order what I like the least to most in the category of a bunch of drinks, or what thing would I want least mashed into a hamburger. They're weird questions. You have to order your preference of 5 different answers. And then other players also order what they think you would choose, and then they have the opportunity to try to change your mind. It's chaotic, it's loud, it's good for a few laughs, but it's not the kind of party game that makes me think I want to own it, but I'm happy to play it. It's not a bad experience, I just don't need to own it. Similarly, in a very similar vein, but different, we have Lineup. Lineup is a similar idea. You're trying to line up certain things. It's a little more open-ended in this one. It's usually questions like, how much would it take, how much would I have to pay you to, I don't know, run naked across the football field in the middle of a game? Okay, like that kind of question. Players can ask clarifying questions, and then you answer your questions, but you write them down, so it's completely open-ended, and then players kind of choose what they think would have ranked. They pick 3 players, and they choose to rank those 3 players. Like, I think Henry would have chosen the lowest number, I think Sarah would have asked for a high number, and then Josh is somewhere in the middle. And you kind of choose to kind of see if your sequence of choices is correct or not, and you score points accordingly. Of course, in both these games, there is a NSFW expansion, you know, a little not safe for work expansion, where the questions get a little more risque, because party games like this tend to require that, and by require, I mean that sarcastically, but it tends to be a thing. But anyways, both games had a lot of fun, both games had a lot of laughs, and both games I never need to play again. They're not the kind of party games that hook me, they're the kind of party games I'm like, I'll play it, sure, whatever, it's not going to be a bad time. And sure enough, it wasn't. And that's where my high praise ends. From there we have MindUp. MindUp is a lighter small box game from Pandasaurus. Pandasaurus in general has been knocking it out of the park for me with these small box games. MindUp doesn't fit into that category. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed MindUp. I think it's a fine game, but it's a fine game. It's not a game that makes me go, ooh la la, I really want to play that. This is fun. You can play it on BGA. It's basically a game of trying to gather certain cards and order their sequence. So if you've played games like Subastral or games like River Valley Glassworks, it kind of has that scoring mechanism where you're trying to make sure you get things in the right order order so you can score as many points as possible. There's a few little variable cards in there to make the game a little more interesting as you play through it. I think it's fun. I think it's fine. I don't think it stands out for me. Then we have Sand, which unfortunately did stand out for me. This is from Referral Games. If you've seen my first impressions video of this, and I specifically called it first impressions, I only got one play of this game in, but I cover that in the video. But if you saw my first impressions video of this, you will probably not be that surprised. Sand is from Referral Games. Referral Games has generally been on a roll for me. I find Referral Games, the games they've been putting out the past 2.5 years, have either been amazing games that I keep, or very, very good games that I don't keep. But they're usually one of those two categories. Sand, for me, is the first one that does not fall into that category. The biggest issue I had starting off the bat is I thought the rulebook was an absolute mess. I actually watched the Dice Tower review after I filmed my first impressions. I saw they commented on the same kind of issues. They had the same general issues where even when they had illustrations, the illustrations made things more confusing, not less confusing. I thought the rulebook was an absolute mess in this game. The game underneath that rulebook, for me, is simply not my type of game. So the rulebook, a terrible, horrible mess, in my opinion, and others' opinions. The game itself is not my type of game. The game is very tight, which I don't mind, but more importantly, it's a very tight pick-up and deliver game, and pick-up and deliver games, there's only 2 pick-up and deliver games that have ever really made it through for me, and those are going to be Mistwind and Xayah Legend of a Drift System. Those are the 2 pick-up and deliver games that I really, really enjoyed. There might be other games that have elements of pick-up and deliver, elements that, like Forsaken has elements of it. But yeah, either way, those 2 games are the ones that work for me, and Sand for me is a very, very tight game where all you're doing is picking up and delivering things and then trying to keep your warm alive by just getting back their health. I just didn't find the puzzle as intriguing as I generally find Referral Games. So this is unfortunately a miss for me, and it's leaving as quickly as it possibly can. It's been a while since I didn't like a game this much, but again, part of it is the rulebook, and then the problem is, this is one of those things in life. I've played a lot of games that have bad rulebooks. I've played a lot of games that I have to power through rules, but when the thing on the other side isn't personally rewarding, it makes that process much worse. Like if you're on a terrible, horrible road trip where everything's going wrong, but at the end of it, you're at, I don't know, Six Flags, or some place that you really want to be, a board game convention, it changes the whole kind of situation, as opposed to if you go on a really horrible, bad road trip, and the end of it, the convention you got to was canceled too, that just makes everything worse. All the struggle and hardship that went into the drive is now compounded because the end result wasn't even worth that whole process. And that's similar to how I feel with Sand. I've played through some bad rulebooks where I've loved the game and I've praised the game and I've been a big fan of it. In the case of Sand, the end result was not a game for me, and that made the frustration of the bad rulebook worse. So it's unfortunate. It's not fair per se, but I'd say that I think once you put out a bad rulebook, I don't know if it has to be fair. You're the publisher per se, and again, huge fan of Devere here, which I feel bad, but I think that when you're the publisher putting out a bad rulebook, I think it's on you that yes, your bad rulebook might bias the person against an experience further than it would have otherwise, but I think that's the price you pay for the bad rulebook. Like, I had similar issues with the player count. I thought the player count of 4, I played it as a 4-player game. I do not think that's the best way to play this game. But I disliked the game so much, I wasn't willing to give it another shot at a different player count. So that's where we are. Again, called it a first impressions, not a review for a reason, but ultimately that's why I'm on Sand, unfortunately. Anyways, moving on from there, we have a set of 3 games. This is going to be Ivion, the hero card crafting game. This is actually a fun game. I've enjoyed Ivion. You can see a playthrough on the channel. This is sponsored content, to be clear. But I like the set. Like, I was happy when they sent me the whole set. I enjoyed playing through it. I think my problem with Ivion is my problem with a lot of these games. It requires me to really more mentally invest a lot more into it. And once I am, I'd rather play games like Marvel Champions or insert other game title here. I find I have a hard time with games that ask you to invest your time, even if you don't have to. Like, you can use their preset heroes or whatnot, but there's a degree of card crafting. It's not a full TCG or even LCG. There's card crafting where you pair up certain attributes with certain elements of the game to build your hero. It's a fun little system, but I don't like the game enough to really commit to it, and then at that point, I kind of back away from it. But if you're looking for an interesting skirmish game with lots of fun characters, again, I think this is actually good. I just don't have space in my collection for good games. I need the very best for me. From there, we have KoFi Baras over here. KoFi Baras from KTBG. This is not a bad one. I think that my issue with this one is it's a little lighter than what I have for my personal collection, and it doesn't resonate as much with my kids compared to the other games for KTBG games. So for me, I like this one. I enjoy it. It's actually interesting. Like, I rate KoFi Baras higher than Diced Veggies, for example, but I actually have Diced Veggies and kept it because that one resonated with more with my kids. This fell into a middle spot where my kids are fine with it, I was fine with it, but no one loved it quite as much. So even though I personally rate it higher, I'd recommend Diced Veggies more. That's a weird... There's weird things about rating games sometimes. Sometimes you're trying to rate a game, and it's like, how do you rate a game? Do you rate a game based on your own experience? Do you rate a game based on how it could be for that genre? Do you rate a game based on how much your kids enjoyed it if it's a kid's game? Do you rate a game based on how much you think other people enjoy it? If I think it's a really good game that I really respect, like, man, even Sand over here, I think the end result's a pretty good pick up and deliver game, but it's not for me. Rating games is a fascinating little problem that the only thing I can really say is try to pay as much attention as possible to the awards, and then the score is a final thing on top of it. I say that though, but keep in mind, I'm just as much of a hypocrite there, because I look at I watch the Dice Hour reviews, and the first thing I do is I scroll to the ratings, and only after I see the rating do I then go back and decide if I want to watch the rest. So I am just as much a part of the problem over here, but practically speaking, I think a number only encompasses so much, and awards will encompass more. It is weird. It bothers me that I personally enjoy Cafe Baras more than Diced Veggies, but I would recommend Diced Veggies over Cafe Baras because of... It bothers me. I don't have an answer. It just bothers me. It is what it is. Moving on, we have Tangram City over here. Tangram City, this is going to be from Capstone Games. I was really excited to play this one. I was like, ooh, this is a fun little interesting variation on polyominoes, because it doesn't really show you as much on the back over here, but there's tangrams. There's tangram pieces instead of polyominoes, so it's different. It's the same but different. It is the same but different. The problem is it's boring. I don't mean that sounds mean. It is what it is. Tangram City, the first game I played, was very good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. It was a good mix on polyomino games. It gives you that aspect of you're trying to build your city with little tangram shapes, so slight difference, and it's a fun game. The problem is the game is the exact same every single time you play it. There's no variation to the way you're going to play this. Nothing shifts up the game state, and the game itself is all your own little solo puzzle, so it's just not really a variable experience. There's a degree of optimization and getting better at it, sure, but I would rather play most games in the genre over Tangram City. It's not that Tangram City's bad. If you have a chance to play this at a convention, at a board game cafe, or your friend's copy, I'd encourage it. I think it's a good experience to have once. I don't know if I'd recommend it a second time or a third time. I think every subsequent play, for me, gets worse. Now, again, I am someone who prefers games that mix it up. There are people out there that prefer mastering a game. Like, you give them a core set and it's all about the mastery of it. That's not why I play games, and so for me, this is an easy miss after the first few plays. Again, the way my rating in it was a 3.5 based on the first play, but then a 3 from there. It's not a bad game. I've had fun with it. It just doesn't give me any reason to continue playing it unless you're interested in the mastery, and for me, I'm not. From there we have Incan Gold from Eagle Griffin Games. This is a fun little push your luck game. I like it. My only issue is I don't love it. I have other push your luck games I recommend more. I think I said this in the roundup review I did, but the main place this would resonate for me is at higher player counts if you want to push your luck at higher player counts. And for me, if I have an 8-person game, I'm trying to pull out I'm trying to pull out One Night Ultimate Werewolf or Quest as opposed to a game like this. So I think it does have a space for push your luck at higher player counts, but that's just not the space that I'm going to try to occupy. In fact, I'd recommend Can't Stop over this one from Eagle Griffin Games, although that only goes up to 4 players. I think there is a way to like get pieces that make it go higher player counts, but I don't know. Anyways, we have Tanis over here. The first Phil Walker Harding game that I've rated lower than a 3.5. Phil Walker Harding I find is consistently good. His stuff is very, very enjoyable. Some of the stuff I absolutely love. I still love Baron Park. It's my go-to polyomino game, speaking of polyominoes. But Tanis, unfortunately for me, is the first game I gave lower than a 3.5 for Phil Walker Harding, I believe. And I just find that Tanis to me just didn't... It wasn't, again, not a bad game. You're trying to grab tiles from a box, trying to make sure you can build certain sets of tiles. I think the main little charm of it is the aspect they all fit into this little box inside the box, but ultimately the end result was a game that I didn't think was satisfying enough. Yeah, to me it's the first Phil Walker Harding game that I've been less than a 3.5. His stuff is usually consistent. It may not be amazing, but some of it's really good, and others just consistent, good gateway games. Tanis for me was a bit more of a miss. Still not bad, but a bit more of a miss. From there we move on to the last two over here, and the last two are going to be the ones that I think are a bit more interesting to get into. We have Ark Nova coming up over here. This is the one that you might not be a fan of me getting rid of. This is the number 4 ranked game on BGG. Not that you should care if I'm getting rid of a game. It's my collection, not yours. But I do understand the emotional investment of, like, if I watch a review or get rid of a game that I love, I'm like, how dare you not like that game? I still am upset. Board Game Ramblings, I recommended Cyclades to them. They played it. It didn't work for them. I'm still upset about that. Why am I upset about that? It's completely irrational, but it is what it is. Anyways, over here we have Ark Nova from Capstone Games. Another Capstone Games being gotten rid of over here. Ark Nova I've had in my collection for probably around 2 years now. I got it when it first came out, maybe a few months after, and I've continuously been playing it until then, and I like it, but I do not love this game. Ark Nova for me, I don't know. I kept trying to play it to like it more and more. You can check out my full review on it. Hopefully my review goes up before this video. So we'll see. I finally filmed a review after 2 years of playing it again and again and kept on trying to love it. But ultimately, the end result is a game that I simply enjoy. I think Ark Nova is fine, and I think it's too long for a game that's fine for me. Now again, make no mistake, it is the number 4 ranked game on BGG. There's clearly an audience for this game. This game is clearly very good, but for me, it's just good. I think Ark Nova is good, and I prefer other games in the genre. I don't know what it is. Like, there are some games, there's a lot of games out there in this Tableau Builder universe out there that have been amazing for others, and they're not as good for me. I think Ark Nova is going to be one of them. Earth, which I prefer Earth to Ark Nova, primarily because it plays faster, but Earth is a game that's loved, and I like it. Ark Nova is a game that's loved, and I'm okay with it. Wingspan is a game that's loved, and I'm okay with it. Wormspan is a game that's loved, and I like it. But for me, the games that kind of are the best in that genre are Terraforming Mars and Everdell. Those are my 2 favorite games in that genre, but it is a crowded genre. Raising Robots is also pretty fun, but honestly, the art elevates that game for me. Ark Nova, for whatever reason, for me, after multiple plays, continuing to try, it still doesn't have that magic spark that I need to keep a game like this. And so it's not even a hard decision at this point, because I feel I've really given it that fair shot. There's a part of me that wants to continue to play and continue to experience it, and that is what BGA is for. So I can continue to play this and experience it, but I don't even know if I will. Well, I don't know. Either way, Ark Nova, great game, not for me. The one that hurts me over here, the last one we're getting rid of, is one that I have to think long and hard about, but I do realize that Golem is a game that I'm primarily keeping it because of the theme. Don't get me wrong, I think Golem is very, very good. Golem, to me, I think it's an excellent experience. I believe it gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It's an excellent, tight Euro experience. I really like it. I have too many games like this in my collection, and I do not have time to play this kind of game as much as I'd like, and this is not amongst my favorite. So when I'm looking at my shelves and trying to think through what kind of game I'm going to play, if I'm picking between Coimbra, or Feast for Odin, or Caverna, or Golem, or Bruges, or Le Havre, or any Troyes, and any of these kind of viticulture, Carson City, if I'm picking any of those kinds of games, Golem is going to be lower down on the list. That's the only issue I have here. And make no mistake, there are other games on my shelf that are slowly leaving for that same reason. The thing about Golem that elevates it for me is it is a theme that is a Jewish-based theme in origin, and I do like the fact that there's a Jewish-based theme out there, because most good games don't have a Jewish theme. And so there's an element of, for me personally, there's an element of appreciating this game and wanting it, but ultimately I'm still not going to pull out a game that takes 2 to 3 hours to play just because of the theme, and I'd rather play the other games over it. Golem for me is one of those games I actually recently got rid of Lorenzo Magnifico for kind of the same reason. I got rid of 2, Lorenzo Magnifico and one other game. I don't remember the other one. Hallertau. And all of these games sometimes have a very similar theme to them, which is they feel very tight. And the tight games can be very rewarding, but I find I prefer games where I can do a lot, and tight games I can appreciate very much when done right, but I have less mental energy for them the way. Like, I would rather play, I can play Castle Burgundy day in, day out, it's a blast. But if you put me up against, I don't know, Feast for Odin, that's a tighter experience when I'm trying to make everything work, and those games I have less mental energy for, and so I just have less time for them. And it makes me sad. Golem makes me sad, but then again, I've covered this. The inherent process of finding new games that you love on a regular basis, with a lack of time to be able to play everything you want, means you have to, practically speaking, make decisions as to what is going to get your game time. And there's many, many other games. I could think of easily 10 games on the shelf right now that are probably in that same danger zone. And they probably should go. And some of them will. But one at a time. There's only so much pain I can subject myself to every episode. Anyways, that's what we have over here. These are the games leaving the table. A reminder that if you are over on Patreon or over on KoFi, I'll have a post up where I tell you which games have been gotten rid of, which games, I'll just list the video. Either way, if you're on Patreon and KoFi, there's some free games. Past that, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.